Here is a question most of us have never once stopped to ask. When you hear the word charcoal, what do you picture? The black briquettes in the grill out on the back patio, the dented can of lighter fluid on the garage shelf, the half-torn bag sitting by the lawnmower since last summer, fire, smoke, a cookout in July. That is the whole story the word tells in an American house. Now here is the part that stopped me. The most useful thing a certain kind of Japanese charcoal does in a home, it does cold. It is never lit, not once. It sits in a glass pitcher on the kitchen counter or in a small cotton bag in a dark closet, doing quiet, genuinely valuable work with no flame anywhere near it. Never lit is the whole trick, and by the end of this, you will see exactly why. The charcoal has a name. It is called binchotan, Japanese white charcoal, a pale gray stick that rings almost like metal when you tap it against a hard countertop. Yes, you can burn it, and in Japan the best grill restaurants do. We are going to set that on the shelf and never come back to it because the fire is the least interesting thing this stick can do. Instead, look at the things around your own house that you buy over and over without ever really deciding to. The water filter cartridge you screw into the pitcher and swap out every couple of months. The yellow box of baking soda deodorizer shoved in the back of the refrigerator, the little packets of moisture absorber you tuck into shoes and dresser drawers, and then forget. None of it costs much on any single day, and that is precisely why the running total is so easy to never notice. One stick of this cold charcoal stands in for that entire shelf. Not one of those jobs. All of them in turn from a single purchase, moving through your kitchen and your closets and your bathtub over the better part of a year. And the last job on the list, the seventh, is the strange one. It is where the stick finally dies. And it is still doing honest work the moment it stops being a stick at all. Hold on to that one because it is the whole reason I wanted to sit down and walk you through this. Before we are done, I am going to hand you 7 real jobs one stick does, each one canceling something you keep rebuying, and the one honest limit where it genuinely cannot help you, said plainly and upfront. Let me start with what this stick actually is and the very first thing it replaces, the water filter under your sink. So what is this stick, really? Start with how it is made, because the making is half the surprise. Binchotan comes from ubame oak, a tough little coastal tree, and it is not burned the way you would burn firewood in a fireplace. It is fired slowly inside a sealed clay kiln at a low heat, around 465 degrees Fahrenheit, for close to 120 hours. 5 days of gentle, smokeless heat. Then, right at the end, the kiln is opened. The temperature is thrown up past 1,830 degrees. And the glowing charcoal is raked out and smothered in a damp mix of earth, sand, and wood ash. That pale gray coating, the white in white charcoal, does not come from soot at all. It forms from the dried residue of that final smothering in earth and ash, so the name points to the burying step the charcoal goes through rather than to the fire. And what comes out is barely wood anymore. Tap a finished stick against a stone countertop and it rings, a hard, clear note, almost like you struck a piece of metal. It is almost pure carbon, commonly around 90%. And here is the detail that stops people. A stick of this charcoal will actually conduct electricity. Touch it across a small circuit, and current runs straight through it, which is something an ordinary black lump of barbecue charcoal will never do. That long, patient firing packs the carbon into an ordered structure closer to graphite than to a campfire ember. By that point, the stick behaves far less like burnt wood and much more like a mineral tool, which is exactly why it does what it does in water. Drop a clean stick into a glass pitcher of tap water and leave it on the kitchen counter for an hour or two. The surface of that stick is a dense maze of microscopic pores, an enormous hidden surface area folded into a few inches of charcoal. Chlorine, and the flat, treated taste that rides along with it, gets pulled out of the water and pinned onto those pores, a process called adsorption, things clinging to a surface rather than being strained through a screen. At the same time, the stick gives a little back, a trace of calcium, potassium, and magnesium leaching into the glass. The water loses its chlorine taste and picks up a faint trace of those minerals. That is job one. One stick standing in for the plastic filter cartridge you screw into a pitcher and rebuy every couple of months. Now the honest part, and I want to say it flat out before you get excited, this is a taste filter. It pulls chlorine and it makes cheap tap water taste like something you would actually choose to pour. It is not a purifier. It does not reliably remove bacteria, viruses, heavy metals, or chloramine, and it carries no NSF certification of any kind. You will find sellers online promising a stick strips out lead and mercury and even uranium. That is marketing copy, not a tested fact. And I am not going to hand it to you as if it were one. If your tap water is genuinely unsafe to drink, a piece of charcoal is not your answer. For plain taste, it is quietly excellent. Just know which of those two things you actually need. There is one more thing you have to do with it, and it is the thing almost everyone gets backwards. The stick fills up. Those pores load with everything they have grabbed, and after a few weeks, a tired stick stops pulling much of anything out of the water. So every 2 to 4 weeks, you rinse it and boil it in a pot for about 10 minutes, which drives off what it's soaked in and opens the pores back up. Do that, and a single stick keeps your water tasting honest for roughly 3 to 6 months. Skip it, and here is exactly what happens. The water quietly stops improving, you decide the old trick never really worked, and you toss out a stick that only needed 10 minutes in a pan of boiling water. The refresh is not some chore hanging off the side of the method. The refresh is the method. And when those months are finally spent, when even a fresh boil cannot bring the taste back, you still do not throw the stick in the trash. It has simply finished its first job. It is about to start its second. So it moves from the pitcher to the refrigerator, and this is where the honesty gets easy. Job 1 came wrapped in a long list of things this charcoal cannot do. Job 2 comes with almost none, because pulling odor out of the air is the thing binchotan is genuinely, quietly excellent at. This is the one that just works. Here is why, and it is the same reason as before. That dense maze of pores does not know the difference between chlorine dissolved in your tap water and the smell of last week's fish sitting in the back of the fridge. A smell is only molecules drifting loose in the air, and those molecules get pulled onto the same enormous hidden surface and pinned there. So a tired water stick, rinsed and dried, goes onto a shelf in the refrigerator and starts cleaning the air the way it cleaned the water. It behaves like the little cardboard box of baking soda most people keep by the butter, with one difference. The baking soda, the plug-in air freshener, the gel that smells like a pretend pine forest, most of those either bury one smell under a stronger one or slowly run out. The charcoal adds nothing at all, no perfume, no cover story. It just takes the bad air and holds on to it. And it does the whole job the way it does everything else, never lit. That is job 2. One stick standing in for the deodorizer box you toss in the cart every few weeks without thinking about it. Job 3 is the same trick moved a few feet over into the small dark places where smell and damp live together. Slide a stick or two down into a pair of work boots overnight, and it does two things at once. It pulls the moisture the sweat left behind, and it pulls the smell that the moisture was feeding. Set one in a sock drawer, a coat closet, the glove box of a car that has started to turn a little sour, and that stale note quietly lifts off. The clearest test is the gym bag. You know, the exact bag, the one that announces itself the second you pull the zipper. Leave a stick living in the bottom of it, and after a few days the bag simply stops talking. It goes back to smelling like a bag and nothing else. So it has cleaned your water and now it has cleaned your air, and the next job runs on the very trait that lets one stick dry a soaked boot by morning. It's hunger for moisture. Turn that loose on a whole closet and it sounds like a bigger version of the same trick. And it is, right up to the point where it isn't. Job 4 is where that hunger for moisture gets a whole room to work on, and where you have to be honest about how big a room. Sew a stick or two into a small cotton bag and set it in a coat closet, a kitchen cupboard, the dark cabinet under the sink where the pipes sweat, and it sits there buffering the damp out of that enclosed pocket of air. It does the job the plastic tub of disposable moisture crystals does, the one that slowly fills with cloudy water and gets thrown out and rebought. The difference is the stick never runs out and never has to be carried back from the store. But here is the limit, and I want to be blunt about it because this is the corner where people oversell binchotan the hardest. A stick is a passive buffer for a small, closed space. A drawer, a shoebox, a single cupboard. It is not a powered dehumidifier. It will not dry out a wet basement. It will not fix a room with water coming through the wall. And anyone who tells you a lump of charcoal will pull the damp out of a whole floor of your house is selling you something. In a closed drawer or a small cupboard, it does quiet, modest work. It cannot do anything for a flooded cellar. If you have followed the stick this far, through your water and your air and now your damp corners, you have probably already caught the shape of the thing. One quiet object doing work you were paying 3 or 4 different companies to do for you on a schedule. There is a small crowd of people who have simply stepped out of that rebuy, and it grows a little every week. If you want the next forgotten method to find you on its own, subscribe and it will. Now the kitchen. Because job 5 puts the stick back into water, except this time the water is going to be dinner. Drop a clean piece into the pot before you cook a batch of rice, and it does the pitcher trick all over again, pulling the chlorine and the flat taste out of the cooking water so the grains steam in something closer to spring water than tap. It gives back a little of that same calcium and potassium while it works. And the dense, near mineral body of the stick holds and radiates a low, even heat through the pot. The far infrared warmth Japanese kitchens have leaned on for generations to cook rice that comes out separate and soft instead of gummy at the bottom. It stands in for the bottled water you would have poured in, or the pinch of something you would have added to fake the difference. One honest note that keeps the whole life cycle straight. The stick you cook with is not the tired one you pulled off the refrigerator shelf. You keep a cleaner piece back for the kitchen, and the older ones stay on odor and damp duty. So the stick has cleaned your water, your air, your closets, and now your food. And it still has one more job left before its last one, the indulgent one, the one you climb into. Job 6 is the one you lower yourself into. For a few hundred years, long before a wall of bottled products, a stick or two of binchotan went straight into the hot water of the Japanese bath, the deep wooden ofuro, and it did 2 plain things. It softened the water, taking the harsh mineral edge off hard tap so it felt rounder against your skin. And it pulled the faint stale odor out, the same way it clears your refrigerator, so the bath smelled like clean water instead of old plumbing. That is the whole use. A stick resting in the tub, standing in for the jar of commercial bath salts and the bottle of water softener sitting on the store shelf. Now the part the box will not tell you, because this is where the marketing gets loudest. You will read that the far infrared warmth coming off the charcoal improves your circulation, detoxifies you, draws toxins out through your skin. Set all of that down. Those are claims printed on a box to sell it, not proven benefits. And this channel does not hand you a claim dressed up as a fact. What a stick of charcoal in your bath actually does is soften the water and take the smell out. If that is worth a few pennies to you, and it might be, do it for that reason and not for a health promise that has never once been proven. So stand back for a second and count. Follow this one stick through the house and look at everything it stood in for. The pitcher filter cartridge you rebuy every couple of months, the baking soda box in the fridge door, the little packets tucked in your shoes, the plastic tub of moisture crystals under the sink, the bottled water by the stove, and now the jar of bath salts on the bathroom shelf. One object did all 6 of those jobs, and somewhere along the way, you were sold 6 separate products to do them, each on its own rebuy schedule, each one designed to run out. Nobody hid this from you. There was no secret meeting and no conspiracy. It is only that a single adjustable object sells one time, while 6 single-purpose products keep selling on their own schedules forever, and the second arrangement simply makes far more money. So the single thing got taken apart and handed back to you as a shelf of separate purchases. How you feel standing in front of that shelf is yours to decide. There is one job left. It is the one where the stick finally stops being a stick at all. Job 7 is the garden, and it is the only one on this whole list the stick does not walk away from. By now, the piece of binchotan in this story has done nearly everything a hard object can do. It cleaned your water for a few months, then moved to the fridge, the shoes, the closet, the pot, and the bath, and every time it filled up, you boiled it out and sent it back to work. But charcoal does not last forever. One day, it has crumbled at the edges, or it has soaked up more than boiling can ever drive back out, and it goes dull and quiet and no longer rings when you tap it. That is not the end of it. That is its final promotion. You crush it. A spent stick breaks apart under a hammer or the back of a spade into black grit, and that grit goes into your garden bed or your compost pile. And here's the quiet turn. The same microscopic sponge that pulled chlorine out of your drinking water now does the reverse in the soil. All that pore space holds water and air down where the roots are and keeps heavy dirt from packing tight so it drains instead of drowning. Gardeners have a name for charcoal worked into the ground this way. They call it biochar, and it stands in for the bag of soil conditioner at the garden center, the very last thing this one stick cancels. So follow it the whole way. A stick you never once lit went from your water to your air to your damp corners to the cooking pot to the bath, and finally into the ground, where it will hold moisture for whatever you plant next spring. Every one of its most valuable jobs was done cold, and its final act came right as it crumbled and stopped being a stick at all. This was never a trend somebody invented last year. Binchotan is a named Edo period trade, commercialized about 300 years ago by a Wakayama merchant called Bichuya Chozaemon, and still made in the town of Minabe more than anywhere else in Japan. In 2006, it became the first product the country ever certified under its regional collective trademark system. People have been handing this exact object down, and handing down how to use it, for longer than a lot of countries have been countries. One stick, 7 jobs. One purchase that ends in the garden instead of the trash. There is another of these old methods going up here soon, so subscribe, and the next one will find you.